started now, John.
Thank you, Joe. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the national headquarters of the Theosophical Society in America. My name is John Chianchosi. I'm the Director of Public Programs. And at this time, I ask that you turn off your cell phones and other noise-making electronic devices. This evening's lecture is being webcast. We are live streaming, and I welcome people watching through the internet as well. The Theosophical Society promotes study, meditation, and service. We encourage open-minded inquiry into the world religions, philosophy, science, and the arts, and we have a deep respect for the unity of all life. Our goal is to help people explore the spiritual path so as to arrive at a deeper understanding regarding the wisdom of the ages. Furthermore, we feel that this wisdom is not limited to any one tradition, and thus we offer programs from all traditions. I invite you to pick up one of our program brochures. This is the winter program brochure, which has all the programs that we are offering during the months of January, February, and March. Also, you can find that listing of programs on our website, and usually we group our programs under different categories, beginning with our Thursday lecture series, which is tonight. But we also have events and retreats that are usually held on the weekend, and many classes and groups that meet throughout the week. Please look through this vast array of programs, because I am sure you will find other programs that will be of interest to you. We are a membership organization, and as such, we always are happy to welcome new members. If you feel that you are in agreement with the mission of this organization and would like to support the work that we are doing, the best way to do that is to become a member. And you can join by filling out a form from our website or one of the hard copy forms which you can obtain from the reception area. However, whether you are a member or not, you're always welcome to come and make use of the resources of the organization here, including a wonderful library, bookshop, 40 acres of parkland, and of course, come to many of these programs. Now, for this evening's lecture, we have with us James Phillips, who has spoken here on a previous occasion, and he has graciously agreed to come again to speak tonight. And tonight he will speak on Pharaoh Akhenaten and the sacred wisdom of ancient Egypt. But before I hand the stage over to him, just would like to say that James is quite an expert on Egyptology, if you wish, the study of all that is Egyptian. And he's dedicated his career to making the wisdom of the ancient Egypt relevant for today's audiences through lectures and workshops. He's a graduate of the Monroe Institute in Virginia, and Jim is the creator of the best-selling Imaginization series of creative visualizations that support listeners in gaining deep relaxation, rejuvenating sleep cycles, and other extraordinary states of awareness. So, friends, please join me in welcoming James Phillips.
Thank you, John. I appreciate the opportunity to come here again, actually. I was beginning to wonder if I was going to make it. I've been in Des Moines today, and I've driven in from Des Moines. And about 1 hour before I got here, there was an overturned semi on 80. And that just destroyed the whole schedule, so it made it problematic. But I'm here, you're here, we're all here, we're going to do this thing. You're probably wondering what the third module means that you're sitting and looking at. I teach a 8-hour course in the tri-state, primarily at, I've done it here and at Unity churches, people like that, New Thought style locations. And this is the third of the 4 modules that comprise the 8-hour workshop. So we're going to take a little clip of it, and because it's all about Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and that's what John wanted to talk about tonight. So that's what we're going to do. This that he was referring to is the home study course to initiate your 7 chakras in the ancient Egyptian method. So when we are completely done today, I won't do too much shameless merchandising up here, but you can come over and I will explain to you in the sacred mystery schools, in the 7 years of training, you would initiate each chakra in sequence from your root to the crown. And this replicates that experience. So you could end up literally being a priestess of Isis or a priest of Amun if you went through the program. Okay? All right. Anything anybody wants to make sure that I don't forget about, just real quick before we crank it up and start whipping the slides out? There's quite a few of them in this module, so I won't make it all the way through, I'm quite sure. Akhenaten, Nefertiti, are we familiar with who they are, what they are? All right, well, we're going to have some fun then. Multicolored pendants snap loudly in the strong breeze as you walk through the first pylon into the massive Karnak temple. Dozens of adepts, sem priests, and initiate trainees form a corridor and greet you with laughter and clapping and singing. Ahead is a lone figure, very tall, very regal, wearing a blue and white striped royal Nemes headcloth. You've seen this in pictures. Covers up the hair. Looks like they're actually medieval, but it started back in ancient Egypt. And that's called a Nemes headcloth. And the Shendet linen kiln fashion, that was for modesty purposes for the pharaoh in the front. And as you approach, Pharaoh Akhenaten opens the ancient wooden doors to the Holy of Holies at Karnak. And with a knowing smile, motions for you to enter the inner sanctum and begin your journey into the ageless wisdom of Egypt. In this total module, I'm going to skip the Seeker of Truth parable. Who was Pharaoh Akhenaten? What was his philosophy to live with, which is Ankh en Mat? And then we're not going to have the time to do the Living in Truth imagination, which would be the heart chakra initiation. Okay? So I can explain it to you, of course, but in this lecture we did. It's a 23-minute initiation, and that we just don't have the time for it. And then the gift, okay? So we're going to skip that. This was Pharaoh Akhenaten. This is a statue that sits in the Cairo Museum. It's approximately 18 foot tall, and when you stand in front of it, you actually feel the energy, and he's like alive. It's almost like the way they positioned it, he's looking down on you and reminding you of the philosophy of living in truth, which he invented. And we're going to be talking about that. It's a very spectacular statue. One of his most famous statements, by the way, he's married to Nefertiti. If we don't know him, you know who Nefertiti is, obviously. Is one of his most famous papyrus statements. Always fascinated me. It's, I have no deceptions. I have told no lies. What my heart hated, I did not do. I'm one with the invisible God that created me. I will live for millions of years in this truth. And he uttered these words 14 centuries before the time of Christ. He is on the cusp of what we call prehistory. There's not a lot left of this time. We have notions of the time. It's actually in the New Kingdom of Egyptian dynasties, approximately halfway through the 3,000-year history of Egypt, okay? But what he did was so revolutionary that he has become the most famous of all the pharaohs, even though he only had a 17-year reign. And every religion that we respect on this planet can be traced back to his philosophy of living in truth. So he was a very profound prophet, if you will. Just he was ahead of the ones that we know of as Muhammad and Jesus and the ones that are more into our historical record, okay? This is another picture of him in the statues at the museum. Pharaoh Akhenaten dreamed of a world where individuals lived in peace, as we all dream of, were equal under the law and served each other. Akhenaten was a man with a mission of rare intelligence, deep perception, and with a great sensitivity and gift for words. he actually wrote a hymn called the Hymn to the Aten, and one of the stanzas in it, and I've gotten myself in a lot of trouble at fundamentalist meetings about this, it's almost a lift word for word to the 28th Psalm in the Bible, which is fascinating. 14 centuries before, almost word for word, something he wrote. The poetry is so beautiful, it ended up in the Bible. His aim, and this is where he got himself in trouble, was to purify a way of life he believed had strayed far from its true course through the practice of a spiritual philosophy he called Ankh in Mat. Mat is the goddess of truth. Single feather represents truth and the pursuit of truth. And Ankh, of course, is living, the famous Ankh symbol, so living in truth. Echoes of which have birthed Christianity, Judaism, and Islam well over 1,000 years after his time. Reign, I hate the word, but that's the best way to explain it. The 17 years he was in charge of Egypt. In the 17 years he was in charge of his America, let's bring it home. His 8 million Americans, if you will. He said, we're all going to learn how to live together in a harmony and a balance, and that the earthly harmony is what our, quote, schools are going to be teaching. And that intellectual life is part of a spiritual life. Mental life is a reflection of the divine. We are made in the image and likeness of God by our ability to use our brain, to think, to create thoughts, to make images in our head. That's the image and likeness of God. Not on a cloud with a pitchfork and all that other dumb stuff that we've been given. This holistic philosophy accounted for all the variety and the complexity and the multiplicity of life, but it never implied separation. That was his primary goal, was to get people to understand that we are all unity. We are unified. That the God stuff in me is the God stuff in you, and the God stuff in a rock. It's all. And we know this from our own civilization because we know what an atom is and a nucleus and protons and neutrons. We know what these are. They're in everything. So the sacred mystery schools taught this possibly tens and 15s and 20,000s of years ago. Okay? So to acquire knowledge was to observe the divine at work. All branches of learning were divine. Science was incorporated in the highest exaltation of knowledge, living in truth. We have elements of this today. It's just not combined together in the pursuit of raising our intellectual consciousness as a society. But we have words for it, cosmic consciousness, things like that. We just don't teach it that way as they did in the temples. Okay? So living in truth was his philosophy. As I said, he lived 1,400 years before Christ. He created the first monotheistic state where each individual was encouraged to seek out ways to grow mind and spirit, practice justice, oppose injustice, perform service to state and community, and live in peaceful and joyful harmony within the ordered whole. It didn't matter whether you were a cook, a chief, a candle maker, a baker. It was, how do we learn how to help each other? That was the society he tried to found. And as you can imagine, after 17 years, the 1%ers decided they didn't like this too much. They weren't making quite enough money off of the rest of them, and they took over the army and forced him to abdicate. So if you wonder what happened to him, we never actually have found the body of him. There's quite a lot of theories about that. If you want to go into it, I'd be happy to. As a young man, he was crowned Amenhotep IV, actually. He was initiated as an adept, which is this course over here. He took the 7 years of training. Actually, he got through it in 6. So he was initiated in the 7 chakras. He became co-regent with his father, which was Amenhotep III, at 19 years of age. About 4 years into his, quote, reign, he decided he'd seen that he wanted to bring back the good old religion from a time called Zep Tepi, which was most of the monumental works of Egypt are totally misunderstood. And we go into this a lot in Module 1. The Egyptologists cannot understand how these things could be built by a Bronze Age society. So they've invented these stories of whipping slaves to death and Cecil B. DeMille and logs and rolling things. That's all just bull. The people that built this in a time somewhere about 12, 15, maybe 18,000 years ago. And they were as smart as we were. They had technology to be able to accomplish the task, and they lifted rock at the Great Pyramid, for an example, that we can't even lift today with a crane. Okay? So don't think of these people as like the Cecil B. DeMille stuff. They were on par or even smarter than us in that time. Not dynastic Egypt, way back there. So Akhenaten said, I want to bring back the good old religion. I want to bring back the time of Zep Tepi, called the first time. And so that's what he tried to do in his 17 years. And in his time, the priesthood had drifted away from monotheistic roots. The law of one, which was the principle of Zep Tepi, had been replaced by demigods. Selling idols of these new demigods became a lucrative trade for the priesthood. That might ring some bells for those of you that are involved in certain religions on our planet today. The selling of idols still is fairly popular. And he destroyed all that in his time, stopped it from being done anymore, and he returned the land. Unfortunately, the people of Egypt were all working for the priesthood, analogous to our old South back at the Civil War time. Approximately 40% of all the people in Egypt in his time were working on temple lands, basically as serfs, cultivating and growing the crops that were given to the priests and sold on the open market and getting them rich. Sound familiar? So he abolished all this, which made him a lot of enemies. As I said, the one percenters were not too keen on his whole reign. Soon after his coronation, he mandated the fealty of the people, said there's really going to be one thing and one thing only, and that is the infinite creator, or he named it Aten-Ra. And in quick succession, the idolatry was outlawed, the temples of Amen-Ra were closed, which was the state religion before that, and the lands were returned to the farmers. This is a very famous icon from the 18th dynasty and what's called the Amarna period, which is the Pharaoh Akhenaten's time. And this looks like the sun, but actually the religion of Aten-Ra, what he was trying to teach the people, was the sun has rays that come out, rays of love light. The infinite creator has rays of love light that permeate our environment. Best way to give you an example, those of you who've ever gone to an acupuncturist, they're putting needles in to let the love light, or prana, chi, or ki, pick your word, it's all the same thing, the healer workers, to remove an obstruction so it can free flow the love light. Okay? Love light is the animating force of our Creator. And according to him, to try to deal with a primarily illiterate society, he picked the sun and the disk of the sun, but had rays come out to show the love light with Ankh hands at the bottom to show this is the life-giving principle coming from the sun disk. Not the sun, the disk of the sun. Okay? So it's the light is what he revered and tried to show his people that that's what animates them and creates them and everything else. So his family, of course, was replicated on walls in ways never done before. The common thing, those of you that study this kind of material and really into it, you've probably heard a lot of the malarkey about him being sick or spindly or had some paraplegic disease. He chose this form of art to show he and his family with these elongated heads and spindly legs, because he wanted to subtly show what the original founders of Zep Tepi, the Egyptian society that built all the monuments And here's the stuff that gets everybody a little wild. According to the Sejdi, which keep the traditions alive, we were visited by semi-divine beings who came to our planet and helped us in a very bad time when the planet was self-destructing. And so the pyramids were built, which we talk a lot about in a different workshop. The pyramids were built to take the destructive energy and turn it into productive energy. Okay? So there is a purpose for why pyramids are around the earth. They sit on ley lines. And the ley lines were causing the destruction of the earth. There was like massive destruction going on. And these semi-divine beings came in, called themselves the children of the law of one. And they worked with the indigenous and founded the sacred mystery schools, which is where my training is. Okay? That's what the wisdom keepers believe. Now, they didn't abduct people and do experiments on them. There was none of that kind of stuff. But they came in, and you will notice, for an example, if those of you that study like South American, Kulikan, Huachicotl, those are the same concept. They are children of the law of one. They visited different parts of the world. We're now discovering China, giant pyramid fields. They're just being opened up. So everywhere that there was destruction, pyramids were built, and the children of the law of one created the mystery schools of which I have been trained. Make sense? So Aten Ra, this love light, manufacturer, if you will, of love light, according to the Egyptian cosmology, there was Amma's egg in the middle of the void. The egg opened up and released the love light, and the love light wished to understand itself better and created our universe and positive and negative energy and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately we had galaxies beyond belief through this opening up of Amma's egg. And Aten Ra was never, ever in his time depicted in anthropomorphic, I can never say that word, anthropomorphic image. Again, this filtered down into our time. If you've ever gone into a mosque anywhere on our planet, you will never see a picture of Allah. You will never see a representation of Muhammad. It's all in geometric shape. This survived from his time. That concept of never trying to depict God as a human image. Just a small little point, just to show you how some things have survived so well from his time. This is his family again. He had 6 daughters, tried hard to have a son. I can empathize with him because I had 2 and I gave up. But he tried to find a male heir, and it didn't happen. So the daughters, we know a lot about the older ones and very little about the younger ones. His religion that he tried to teach his people was breathtakingly simple, that the infinite creator was mind or spirit. The word spirit basically and mind are interchangeable. And so at the center of it all is an intelligence we can't even understand. And that we are made in the image of likeness of that because we actually have the ability to use our intelligence to do good or to good bad. Basically, that's third density. And the language of the cosmos is mental, i.e. telepathic at our level. And divine essence of human beings is spiritual, imperishable, infinite, and constant. That carried over into our time. That we have an eternal soul, and then when our body is laid to rest, our soul leaves the physical body and returns to what they called the Amakuha. Amakuha, Amakuha. Big, no surprise there, right? Those of you that do chanting. And the Amakuha is the part of us, you could call it the higher self, I guess, is another word for it, that loves us more than we can even imagine, but it's not physically inside us like the soul is. We are, to the Egyptians, a mind-body-spirit complex. Okay? Mind, a body, and we have spirit inside, call our soul. But we are connected to our Amakuha. And so our soul, upon the demise of our physical body, in other words, the last time you're going to no longer breathe in this body, our soul splits and goes right to the Amaku and reports in all of everything you learned in this particular journey this time. Okay? This is what they look like on a talat, T-A-L-A-T. You might notice those right there. This come up today. I was working with Freemasonry people over in Des Moines. And at the Scottish Rite, we're going to be doing a big workshop. And this came up. And basically, if you were a graduate of the temples, you'd made it through the sacred mystery schools successfully, the notion of raising your serpent energy, this kind of picture which you see on my album, I commissioned this art to show you how the serpent energy works. The left hand is the yellow of the sun, the right hand is the darkness of the moon, positive and negative. That creates the energy to do what we're talking about. And the raising of the Jed, the J-E-D-I, Jed is the raising of this energy from the root to the crown. Okay? Big surprise, Mr. Lucas, back in the 60s, took a course from, what was his name? Real famous philosopher. I always struggle for his name. Starts with an M. Wrote The Thousand Clowns. I can't remember. Anyway, he taught a course at USC, and Lucas took the course. So he knocked off everything I teach. Because he'd been presenting. He said, well, that'd make a really cool script. And so we have the Jedi Knights. And what do the Jedi Knights do? They raise the Force. May the Force be with you. And they perform miracles with the Force. Guess what we do in our workshop? Nefertiti. The first time you stand in the Berlin Museum, the first thing that shocks you is how small Nefertiti's bust is. And then you can't move your eyes. A half an hour goes by. It's only 16 inches tall. Imagine, it's only like that. Sitting on a pedestal, lit 4 different lights, giving it a lot of highlight. And you just sit there and say, oh my God, that's so powerful. She was his alter ego in the 17 years that we know of as their reign. And her function was that the initiated ladies who had made it through the system and now are priestesses of Isis were the keepers of the sacred wisdom of Isis, which from your point of view is the out-of-body experience. Okay? So those of you that are really interested in consciousness expanded outside the physical body, we do that in our 4th module. I teach you what's called the opening of the way, which is the ancient wisdom of the feminine in the mystery schools. Okay? So this explains it. Wisdom of Isis, which confirms that the Sahu, which is the being that shines in its splendor, i.e. the soul, survives the physical death of the body. At the heart of the wisdom of Isis is the practice of the opening of the way, which we do in our workshop, and you can do on here if you never even come to my workshop. It's available on the album, okay? Which alters the Khat, which is your body, this, alters this, and do what they call illuminating the Ka. The Ka are the spiritual pathways of the body until the Ka is so scintillating with energy from the practice that you're doing that you can allow yourself to have a conscious expansion outside your physical body. We used to do this at Monroe for kicks. I didn't realize that it was a spiritual progression. I came into it later, came backwards. Started out just doing this, oh wow, I just want to trip out, you know? But no, there was a point to it all. Nefertiti, okay, I just described this. The divine energy reaches the highest energy center. The Ka is illuminated, and the infinite and the immortal Sahu is release. It's the wisdom of Isis in the big macro teaches that the soul is the more feminine aspect of the mind, body, spirit, in other words, of me, and that the Ba, or the ego, represents the masculine. And unfortunately, my ego is a little too strong, and Ka is a little too weak, unfortunately. I never did learn to balance that very correctly, but those that do it, wonderful. That's the goal of the mystery schools. Soul urges, ego does. Soul provides the dream, ego the manifestation. Balancing the soul and ego then is the goal of the wisdom of Isis. Probably will remain the same. This is the logo that I chose for my company, Living in Truth. That's Akhenaten, think of him like old King Henry VIII. Every time he had a law to sign as the regent, lawgiver of his America, he signed, he stamped once to put this is now a law, and then beneath it, every time, every record we have of him, we don't have much, but every record we have, this is underneath, and it was Ankh in Mat, or he who lives in truth. By my example, his example, you can follow me. So as I just said, he signed it, he who lives in truth. The root of the Mat is Ma, which means to observe or to examine. Akhenaten used Ankh and Mat to inspire us to be conscious of the illusion of the separate self. This is where the rubber hits the road in this philosophy, is the illusion of the separate self. Akhenaten taught, and all the priests of Aten Ra in his 17 years, taught that things are that we're all made of the same stuff, we're interdependent, totally connected. You can't really be separated from anything. You're part of everything. You can think you're separate, you can act like you're separate. I'll give you an anecdotal on this. I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. And if any of you know anything about football, you probably have heard of the Ohio State football team. It's pretty pervasive in this town, okay? They get 110,000 people trot out there to watch the game, and you live and die in this town by football, all right? Guess who the arch enemy is of this group of people? It's called the University of Michigan, and they've been competing for 100-something odd years, right? I had the audacity to marry a Wolverine, being a Buckeye, and written off by at least half of my friends. Seriously. Couldn't you find a nice girl in Ohio to marry that was a Buckeye? I said, no, I fell in love with a girl from Ann Arbor, the mecca of evil. I'm exaggerating, but you get what I'm driving at. They are people just like we were people. And that's what he's trying to teach. The moment we start saying us and them, we've now created the illusion of the separate self. Am I making my point? And it's up to us to be observant. That's what Mat is all about. That if you focus your intention on consciousness of self, you become boxed in, so to speak, experiencing everything from one point of view. It becomes an extension of you. There's only your neighborhood, your state, your country. And the more you do that, the more you get boxed into a bad paradigm that causes you spiritual problems. So your goal is to do that the least you can, to try to catch yourself. No, I'm not going to think like that. That's what he tried to teach in the temples. I'm going to try not to think that way. Obviously you will, we all do it, but you can control it, and you certainly can control your actions in this way. Something uttered out of your mouth. You know, the Egyptians taught in the mystery schools that what comes out of your mouth is sacred. And we use what comes out of our mouth in unsacred ways. Profanity, for an example. We say gossip and devious things and things behind people's back. Yes, we live on a free will planet, but the sacredness of the apparatus that we use between our lungs, our trachea, and the mouth that comes out, the words that come out, is a gift from God. The fact that we can do this is a gift from God, and we shouldn't misuse this gift constantly, and a lot of people do. Okay? So his truth was that all beings are one. Oh, no, that's no problem.
I was trying to see if the cameras are pretty. Maybe you could mirror off.
Oh, no.
Watching this, because I was going to tell her mother that she could see us.
Well, wave.
Yeah.
Wave, hello, hello. His truth are that all things are one, all beings are one, and there's no right or wrong in the one. That was hard for me to get my head around, that there's no right or wrong in the one. My mentors in Egypt, I should have mentioned, I lived in Europe for 11 years of my life. I had the privilege to live in Paris and London and in Ireland for 5 years. And I constantly was booking cheap flights, $50, to go to Cairo out of Luton and out of Stansted and out of the English airports. And then out of Dublin later. We had things called Ryanair and Fast EasyJet, and these were dirt cheap ways to get to Cairo. So I went to Cairo a lot in that era, which is where I learned this material from, okay? And I've just mentioned he symbolized the love light coming in Ankhs. Just as the rays of the sun fructify the earth, the rays of love light offer everlasting life for mankind. So it's almost like a metaphor. The symbology of Akhenaten that's so famous that we've all seen, the disc, the hands, is a metaphor for the life-giving aspect to our spirit of love light. Akhenaten believed that heaven is a plane of souls striving towards compassion and wisdom. There's no deception in this density because thoughts, feelings, and desires may be easily seen and understood by other selves. Needless to say, if telepathic ability is if everyone we ever met in this discarnate state in, quote, heaven, which is fourth density in the Egyptian sacred mystery school, if they could read our minds, we best not be thinking bad thoughts about them. Wouldn't be too cool, would it? So he's saying that if we actually want to escape the Earth-style environment where we deal out cards of love and hate and false belief that we can protect ourselves from you, I could protect myself from you, to leave the earth life behind forever, in other words, to break through and to achieve what the Egyptian mystery schools called ascension, which is to break the reincarnation cycle. In our modern language, they called it ascension, is that you need to lay out your cards face up on the table and simply say, all you other players, every other self, whatever your hand, I love you. Probably the hardest thing we could ever do. That's the school. It's that simple. One sentence is how we break the reincarnation cycle. Practicing is another ballgame. Very hard to do. So you gaze into the mirror, see the one. This is what he taught. Look at the other self, see the one. Look out at creation, see the one. Consider the thoughts you created today was service to other selves in those thoughts. You can live in truth if you wish to do so. Service to other selves frees you from the illusion of the separate self and awakens you to the truth that lies within. This is what Akhenaten tried to teach. Thank God it survived into our time through various prophets, through various religions. He was the first to do it that we know of. Now, we're not going to do that because that would, at this point of the workshop, you would initiate your heart chakra. And you'd spend 23 minutes using one of these to understand your personal source of loving energy. And you basically would be following along a pre-recorded 23-minute journey that I have made for you to learn how to do that. And each of the initiations are 23 minutes long that way, okay? Using what you call creative visualization. Sound effects, music to assist you, and my voice. Some people like my voice. I don't know why, man. All right. I'm not going to get into this. So I'm going to get to the questions, because this is basically what's happening on the initiation. I will show you this, though, so you can take home a nugget. Doesn't cost a thing. Something very cool to be able to do. If you notice yourself running down like the ever-ready bunny, and you're saying, I'm really getting very tired, I can almost lay down and do a little snooze, my energy level is low. This is a very cool thing to do. If you're going to meditate in the morning or in the afternoon, do this before you meditate. It will protect you from negative energy in your environment, like the old Colgate shield, and it will energize you at the same time. So cleansing of the mind and body in the Egyptian way, and they did this 3 times a day. You put your 4 fingers on the seeing eye, the psychic eye, the 6th chakra, and just follow along with me. May the power of love cleanse my spirit. And then take the junk off. Think of it like you're cleaning your flypaper. Actually, you're taking your 9 energetic bodies and cleansing them by doing this. May the power of love cleanse my spirit. In the mystery schools, 3 was the sacred number. Everything was done 3 times. May the power of love cleanse my spirit. Do you feel a little bit different by any chance? If you can sense it, you're pretty attuned to that, okay? You've taken off the junk that has attached itself to your esoteric bodies that go out about 4 feet away from you, okay? And you cleansed yourself. That's the way they call it, the sacred bath. I made it modern by calling it the cleanse mind and body exercise, because you don't live 10,000 years ago, you live in modern times. So I just turned around things and made different words for them, okay? And it's really cool to do when you get run down. It's also cool to do if you're going into a meeting and you're saying, I really want my energy right for this meeting. Just, it takes 10 seconds to do it. Once you're used to it, it's really quick, okay?
What's the words that go with it?
May the power of love cleanse my spirit. In other words, you're asking the infinite creator, the love light that is around you, to help wash off the junk that you've collected, or you created worse. Because sometimes you created because you got angry. All right? You're trying to get rid of that. May the power of love cleanse my spirit. You come back to a namaste pose and then throw the junk off. Cool? I know that was quick, but that's a very nice habit to get into. Okay, what else? And then we'll do the, okay, we would have done it. We're not going to do that. It's too much for this lecture. The basic concept, I'll just do 3 more minutes. The basic concept of the mystery schools and manifesting in this dense environment. You can sit there, I'll give you a perfect example. I thought I was really good at this, right? Dr. Hakim had worked with me for a couple years. I'd gone to so I went back home to London. I said, I'm going to manifest myself a Ferrari. I'm so cool at this now. I know how to do it. So I made a movie, you know, did it every morning in my mind during my meditation. I got up, went down to Piccadilly Circus, and went into the Ferrari dealership, you know, give the guy cash, you know, started up, went around the circus, back down to my apartment in Chelsea and parked my car. That was the movie that I wanted to see happen. That's the Egyptian system. You keep making the movie stronger by seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and touching the movie you're making your mind as if it's real, till one day it's so real something happens. That's the Egyptian system in a nutshell, and that's what I teach you to do on this album. Okay, so I'm making my movie each day. Yeah, I'm running around Piccadilly Circus and I'm in my Ferrari, but something inside me is saying the sound of truth. It isn't going to happen. I can almost hear the little voice. It isn't going to happen. Oh, screw you. I'm going to keep doing it because I want the Ferrari. It isn't going to happen. After 30 days of doing it, I realized it isn't that I didn't have the technique. I wasn't hearing the sound of truth, which the Egyptians called the fire of heaven. It wasn't right for me. When it's right for you, this movie you've been making will just jump off the page. You'll feel like you're a tuning fork. You'll be so joyful from it that you almost want to yell out in your joy. And that's when you're cranking it up and doing it the right way. I was just playing around. Okay, what else is there? Then we'll take some questions. That's the fire of heaven. In other words, this is the bit, what I call the Ferrari metaphor. I never got my Ferrari. I still don't have a Ferrari, so it didn't happen. Nor do I want one now, by the way. Once you have created this movie of what you want, a new spouse, a new job, a new apartment, whatever, then you will release it to the universe, saying, if it be in my higher good and the highest good of all, would this be manifested for me? Something on that order, which is what we do a lot on the CDs. Something will happen if it was right for you, okay? So, to bring Akhenaten home, Dr. Tom writes in the Unity magazine, you can't just think happy thoughts and expect Tinkerbell to sprinkle you with pixie dust and overcome life's obstacles. We rely on a lot of other people's advice to help us overcome obstacles. Sometimes we get locked up in an affirmation and we think that's going to stop the obstacles. We even have a saying for it, a picture's worth 1,000 words. What you do in your mind with the pictures, making a movie of what you want to change, is much more powerful to manifest change. Much more powerful, okay? And don't get on yourself for not knowing how to do it. This, I used to get on myself about it, and then I read this and it summed it up perfectly. Imagine you're in a third world environment and you know that energy can be manifested. You know that other people are having some manifestation of energy, but no one's given you the skill set. You haven't been shown how to dig a well. You haven't been given the tools to dig the well where the natural water is beneath in the aquifer. My album, I hope, helps you, give you the tools to be able to manifest energy, which is the goal of the Sacred Mystery Schools, is to learn how to manifest energy. Freud wrote, and then we're about done, Freud wrote that, and Freud was a big Akhenaten, wrote a whole book on it. In fact, at the end, he actually said he thought Moses and Akhenaten were one and the same. That's a whole nother discussion, okay? I don't go there, but if you want, I can give you some threads about all that, all right? But he said, a great man influences contemporaries for the idea which he stands. Akhenaten was a great man, definitely. Unknown to history, but a great man. He stood for a beautiful idea, living in truth, offers a way for us to find peace and harmony as an individual, gives something back to our communities, and live together in cosmic law and proper order. What a brilliant dream he tried to do for his America. This is his famous saying again, I've made no deceptions. His words speak the truth to us today, even after thousands of years. I've told no lies. And this has been the hardest thing for me to learn after running a Hollywood studio. You can imagine how much lying I had to do. That there's no more gray areas. If I say something, it came out of my mouth, it's sacred, it has to be the truth for me and the ones that hear it. We cannot knowingly harm ourselves or anyone again by telling white lies. What does that even mean? When you get right down to it, lie is a lie is a lie. What my heart hated, I did not do. This most of us tend to do a lot. He's saying, and he means it literally, we will not waste any more time and effort doing something that in our hearts we know is wrong for us. If you absolutely despise your work, you despise the people you work with, you cannot hardly get up and go there. Start a movie about the job, the career that you really, really, truly want to have, and start doing that movie in the morning and make it stronger and stronger and stronger. Okay? That's the Egyptian way to manifest energy and get out of that job you hate. I'm one with the invisible God that created me. We recognize that our mind is the God-given tool we use to create what we experience in this world. We will serve those in need, love wastefully, and have the courage to live in truth. And then finally, Schopenhauer, which is a very famous philosopher, says it's difficult to find happiness within oneself, but it's impossible to find it anywhere else. What a brilliant way to say it. He just summed up the Sacred Mystery School philosophy in a sentence. Yeah, I give you a whole bunch of tools. This is the goal. You find happiness in yourself. Down deep, you know it. Coming in this era, the era we are now, you probably are all former Egyptians anyway, or you wouldn't be here interested in this material, okay? Is a new, stronger sense of community, a heartfelt desire for a new world grounded in the kind of love, compassion, kindness, caring, and sharing that they once had in Zep Tepi. And we all want to receive and so desperately need to give to each other. Pharaoh Akhenaten is whispering to us and to you from across the ages. Can you hear him? And that's just about the fastest I've ever been through that module. So I think you wanted to do some questions. I'm happy to do questions.
Yes, we have plenty of time for questions. So
Good.
if you do have a question, just raise your hand and
It doesn't
I'll
have to
bring
be
you
on
the
Akhenaten
microphone.
either. If it's just something you really want to know about Egypt, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, you
No,
mentioned,
just wait. Don't.
Oh, I got a big voice. I can. Anyways, you mentioned the little voice in your head near the end, which you kind of. It was speaking to you about the Maserati or whichever car it was you
Yeah,
were
same
envisioning.
concept.
But anyway,
It's a knowing.
would you say that knowing could be possibly your higher self?
Yes.
It's kind of a multi-layered
Oh,
question
yeah.
here.
Yeah,
so
it
your
is.
higher self, how does it tie in with your soul? Because you said your soul.
Soul is inside of us. The
Right.
higher self, the Amakuha, exists outside of us, but think of it like tethered to us.
The golden
okay?
thread, or not the golden.
Yeah, the golden,
silver cord.
exactly, the silver thread,
Gossamer
if you
thread,
will.
that's what I'm looking
And in
for.
Monroe, we used to play around with going outside our body and looking for all of that. So, I mean, I've actually seen that at Monroe, which was cool. But you're right, it's my Amakua saying, just drop it, dude. It isn't for you. I know, because I am of a higher consciousness, that if I gave you another Ferrari like I gave you a ranch and you blew through that in California, it isn't going to serve your spiritual progression to be given all that monetary stuff. All right? So I've been there, so I could see why it didn't happen. Sorry, go on.
Just wait.
I can really talk loud, I think.
But we want to record the question.
So, higher self, would you say, is it more of a, not really a personal self, but maybe say the Holy Spirit, possibly, if you will? Or
Okay.
a bigger.
I'll tell it from the way the Sacred Mystery Schools taught. And this is the way Dr. Hakim taught. By the way, Dr. Hakim was one of my teachers, and you can Google him and YouTube, and you'll see a whole bunch about him. Dr. Hakim Aswan, he was the talent for the Pyramid Code. You can find, he was kind enough to work with me a fair amount, so I'm very, very indebted. Think of it that we have a mind, a body, and a spirit. Spirit is our soul. Our inside us, a soul, the eternal soul, like the noetic sciences, for an example, just as to give you an example. I'm going to get to your thing. The noetic sciences did a test. They went all the hospices in the Bay Area, from Petaluma down to the South Bay, and they knew roughly when people were going to make transition, and they were lucky enough to get a way to measure about 18 of them, if I remember right, on the test, and they averaged a loss of 6 to 8 grams of body weight at the time of transition, which is because Edgar Mitchell was like a big into science. That was his thing. That's what noetic sciences are all about, proving spirituality, but not relying just on faith, if you get what I mean. Okay? And this is one of their tests that was really fascinating. So this thing that we call the soul takes off as soon as we have physically demised. And that soul books right back into the dimension where the Amakua exists, and the Amakua's job description, I'm using modern language, is to help us in this dimension while we're alive. And it communicates with us in the form of intuition. When we hear or feel or think something and it feels strong, 99 times out of 100 we ignore it. That's our Amakua talking to us. I used to, when I was first getting into this for fun, I'd say, okay, let's see if I can make a parking space happen. And I said, where's my parking space? And I would see in my mind from my Amakua saying, 2 blocks down, 1 block over, there's a parking place. Bang, it almost always happened. Okay? The Amakua talks to us all day. Our higher self loves us, doesn't want to see us screw up, but we just keep screwing up anyway. Okay? So if you listen to your intuition and act on your knowingness, you're going to probably do things more right than all this logical left brain, oh, I analyzed all this and this is the way it has to be. And you see me driving around in a Ferrari, so you can see what my left brain did for me. Okay. Did I answer your question halfway?
Yeah, halfway. I mean, it's elaborate. So,
All right.
Gotta be partway there. Hey,
Think of it. Think about it. The best way is to finish the thing. Your higher self, i.e., this Amakua, is connected to the Akashic records.
Okay.
Now, the Akashic records are everything, everybody, everywhere is ever known and discovered in perpetuity. And so you and I are not tied into that. It is.
Okay.
Okay? Is that making a little more sense?
You know, so
Think of it like a hierarchy.
Right.
It's me, Amakua, Akashic records, infinite creator. I mean, that's not a very good, but it's close enough. All right.
We have one more question.
Now, as you were talking about, what happened to his body, and I'm just curious, what were the theories that happened to his body?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, Nefertiti and Akhenaten's remains have never been found. We do believe that in his 17th year, that he was forced to abdicate because the one percenters and the military industrial complex all gathered together and said, we're going to kill you if you don't go. So he took tens of thousands of his followers out into the desert. Sound familiar? And we think that he had an exodus, and according to my teachers, that's the second exodus. Okay? So that what we know of as the Exodus story in the Bible is actually an amalgam of two exoduses. A few hundred years before, there had been a civil war in the 18th dynasty between the North and the South. The Northerners lost, and they went and founded the country that we know of as Israel. There was a place called Canaan, and if you've ever, the best way I don't like getting in an argument with a rabbi about all this, I did one time, but I ask you this, why is this country sits on our planet named Israel, when you break it down semantically, Is-Ra-El. For the Hebrew, El is God. For the Egyptian, Ra is God. Hello. And is means here is. Here is the God of Egypt and the God of the Hebrew together. Isn't that interesting? So the first Exodus was basically Egyptians went and founded the country. A few hundred years later, where would he go? If he's going to being persecuted, he would go to them. Okay? Now, this gets into the Moses angle. If truth that it happened that way, the last pharaoh of the oppression, named Horemheb, when Akhenaten would have been in his 70s, by chronology, long beard, Moses stuff, he probably came back and tried to take the country that was his and try to do the experiment over again that they didn't allow him to finish. So the theory is that in that aspect, Akhenaten and Moses are the same. That he returned to the priesthood and tried to convince them that now that Horemheb is gone, it's reinstitute me, and he failed. But the scepter and the serpent and all that would have been a result of that. Okay? That's the theory. I have very little to prove it. But it's what the Sejdi believe.
The one I've heard is that Moses was actually an adept of Akhenaten.
Ah.
And that there was, a period of time went by when obviously the followers of Akhenaten were picked on, for lack of a better term, for obvious reasons.
Right.
And then the whole sequence of events, which is paraphrased in Exodus, happened, and they said, okay, you guys get out of here.
Yeah, you're on it. But think of it as two different events that the Bible authors put into one event because it was more convenient for them. They took the best elements of both. But you're dead on right. The followers of Akhenaten would have been persecuted by the pharaohs after him. So they either left or got persecuted. Take your pick. Because they would not allow this monotheistic state to survive, the pharaohs after that, because they're one percenters and they want to control everything. Seems a little familiar, by the way.
I have a question that somebody sent in through the internet.
All right.
Is conscious astral projection a part of the ancient Egyptian teachings, and do you instruct students in this?
Wow. Okay. Is it part of the teachings? Yes. Do I instruct astral projection? It's, to me, my goal in the opening of the way in the fourth module is to allow you to escape the physical body with your consciousness. If you become adept at that activity, you can project yourself into a nation and do, the good of astral projection. At Monroe, we had, our government had financed 5 or 6 Ingo Swann and 3 or 4 other people to be think tank people during the Cold War. And their job was to find where the Russian submarines were in the ocean and things like that. They used astral projection for that. That's not exactly what I do, okay? I'm more about energy and working the energy and releasing the energy. So specifically, like saying, can you tell me what's hidden behind that wall over there? That's not exactly what I go for, okay? Be kind of cool. I guess I should spend a little more time doing that, but it isn't.
I have another question. This is a question that may be from someone within the theosophical tradition.
Yeah.
We have been taught in my esoteric school, that's the esoteric school of the Theosophical Society, that Akhenaten was an earlier incarnation of the master Kuthumi.
The master what?
Kuthumi is one of the Kuthumi is one of the masters that is written about in the theosophical literature. I'm just wondering whether you'd heard anything.
I'm so sorry. I'm not aware
familiar.
of that, but I can imagine that he's had many, many, many lives as a conscious being, as we all have. Okay, and some of those lives we probably were much more enlightened, and other times we were pretty bad. I had a chance to visit 7 of mine through past life regressions, and some of them I'm not too proud of who I was. So let's let that go. But I assume that this master was an earlier incarnation of what Akhenaten brought in or vice versa, either way. Okay? I mean, consciousness and enlightenment are all about the ability to use your mind in a way to create good energy. And the job description of the priestess of Isis and the priest of Amun at the temple was what you and I would call therapists today, to help you make a movie in your mind to bring another child in because you and your husband have lost your last child and you would like to have another child. So that was their job. They were therapists. Okay. I wish I knew the answer to that. I'm sorry, I don't.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm not.
Jim?
Yeah, if we could go back a minute to your earlier conversation about what happened to him and his wife and why were they, kind of escorted out of the,
Okay.
Egypt.
Well, again, it's easy to understand if you think of our America. If somebody that had the power to change the entire system and make us all live in oneness, some of us would resist that because we're used to putting meters in your house and charging you for electricity and making money off of it, or selling us gasoline at exorbitant prices. So what we euphemistically call the 1%ers, they had that same problem back then. It's the problem of the human race. That's why we have cycles of enlightenment and cycles of decadence, if you will. And the 1%ers, the elite that he threw out from the temples, interesting, plotted against him until they had enough power to overtake him, and they used the military to do it. He basically had to leave or die. So he abdicated his throne and let Nefertiti stay there. They accepted her. So the Pharaoh immediately after him has her middle name, but no one will acknowledge that it's her, which is like, okay? I mean, her throne name, Nefertiti's throne name is Smenkare. Okay, the middle name of his wife is Smenkare. Guess what the Egyptologists say is the Pharaoh immediately followed him for 4 years after his 17-year reign expired. Pharaoh Smenkare, his evil twin lost brother or something. It was his wife. She tried to keep the reigns going even though they were going to kill him. So then she had to abdicate as well. And then we have the lead up into Horemheb, which lasted 20 years, and he was a bad dude. I mean, he literally hired people to chip off anything on a temple wall that said Akhenaten or Nefertiti, to literally take the words so his life never existed. Okay? That's pretty evil dude. I mean, you know, he's just really... Oh, no, he was not the first one to do that. You're absolutely right. But he wanted to get rid of Akhenaten, definitely. He began what's called the 19th dynasty. Akhenaten left no children, or no heirs. He left females. And the matriarchal lineage, the son of the queen mother, if you want to look at it that way, became the next pharaoh in the dynasties. And if there was no son left, even though the blood of the mother dictated this, then a new dynasty began, and Horemheb began the 19th dynasty, which is the dynasty of the oppression. Okay? I'm willing to keep going. It's your shop. Okay?
Certainly. I'll come to you. I just wanted to ask, towards the beginning of your talk, you mentioned something about talking about Egypt at that time. 8 million people? Is that supposed to be?
In dynastic Egypt of the 18th dynasty, roughly 8 million people lived in Egypt.
Okay.
Which it was it was still a Bronze Age society. I guess the thing to understand is the Egyptian dynastic framework goes from 3100 BCE, which is 3,000 years before the time of Christ, down to the time of Alexander and the Ptolemies and the end of that time. So that 3,000 years is called dynastic Egypt. Okay? The Egyptologists think they know who the Sequentian was and the kings and the pharaohs, and there was like 3 women that hid behind the beards and pretended to be men, but basically they were men that did it all through that. But the time that he revered and the time that I worked the hardest on with this material was a time called Zep Tepi. And according to the tradition of the Sejdi, who are Dr. Hakim was my mentor, those were approximately 15,000 years ago or more, prehistory. That there was an advanced civilization that was flowered and was loving and built all these monumental works that we have no explanation for across our world. It's an interesting fact. Believe me, there is some pretty cool stuff when you start to... On the 35th concourse of the Great Pyramid, which is about 50 feet up in the air, there are 100-ton blocks. You're not allowed to climb up there anymore, but I did it anyway. And you cannot put a credit card between the blocks. 100-ton blocks. They had a documentary on History Channel, and they had a Japanese crew, took the biggest cranes that we have on our planet and tried to lift a 5-ton block 50 foot in the air, and they couldn't do it. 100 tons, 50 foot in the air, right into its slot like it's a feather, and put all of them next to each other for 6 acres wide. These are not Aborigines. They're very smart. They had pi, they had all the arithmetic that we have, all the higher math. They had intelligence like us in the first time. Okay? More we open our mind to that, the more we'll understand what they have to offer to us. Because they had a way to create electricity without using fossil fuel. And I teach that. Using what's called piezoelectricity. The ability to compress and to squeeze. And we use them in that, in our television sets. We have crystal structures in nearly everything that we use that's a communicative device, and they create piezoelectricity by squeezing the LED crystals, and compressing and squeezing them creates a small electric current. Think of the pyramid. The Great Pyramid is one big, massive version of that. And they created an electricity in there. So the thing was like Hoover Dam, as well as, I'm getting a little lost in it, but this is something that's another whole 3-hour lecture to show you what the true purpose of the Great Pyramid is. Their name for it, the old Egyptian name from Zep Tepi, is Sabku, the soul star place. Soul star place. That's what the Great Pyramid is. It isn't the Great Pyramid. Pyramid, the word pyramid, the Greeks didn't understand what was happening inside there. You know, people would lay in the box. They'd put a 1.5 ton stone on them over the top of the box. And in their final initiation for 72 hours, 3 days, 3 nights, they had to survive in there with no air. They come back, lift the top off. If you were alive, you're now a priest of Amun or a priestess of Isis. If you didn't make it, well, you should have been learning how to hibernate for 3 days and 3 nights. Guess what has survived into our time? Native American religion. You go out and have a vision quest. How long? 72 hours. Isn't that a really cool little thing? So this concept survived into our time. Okay? Anyway.
I have quite a few more questions.
So you mentioned this cycle of like almost enlightenment, almost total enlightenment, and then the decrease down into a depth and then up again. And that's really a cycle that we've seen throughout civilizations
Also
since that
true.
time and previous. And
Yes.
so if that cycle is constantly happening, but the goal is for this total oneness eventually, how are we going to break that cycle, or is that...
By that fact of being in oneness and learning how to really do that, there'd be no reason for a degradation. There'd be no reason to peak and fall. But even in Zep Tepi, they peaked and fell. I asked Hakim, I said, okay, I'm getting this from the enlightened semi-divine beings that came from Orion, to be exact, which I show in Module 1. And I get it, that they visited us and they were enlightened and they helped us through a very bad time and they founded the mystery schools and then there was this flowered time, but why did it all stop? Why isn't it like that now? He said, imagine, if you will, that some of the priests, once they're, quote, now enlightened, are saying, well, maybe we'll make somebody have to, well, they'll charge them to give them the training. So the children of the law of one finally said, this is a free will planet. I think we're just going to have to leave. We've accomplished our task. The planet's not going to self-destruct, but human beings are human beings. And so that's, I guess, the answer to your thing. Even in this enlightened time, other people were trying to take advantage of other people. They lived in what he called the illusion of separateness, which is going on still today.
One question here, and we've got more.
Just curious, and you're saying Akhenaten went through the initiation rituals. I'm sure
He did.
that some of the other pharaohs went through those initiation rituals as well.
They all claimed it. They all wore the uraeus. Most did not do the official true training.
I was going to ask
It was
what
too
made
hard.
him so different that he decided to revolt against his people, basically, his elite, because he was one of the elite originally.
He graduated from the mystery schools like other priests who graduated, but he was in a position of power, not like them, like the priests that graduated in his time. And in his position of power, he said, I'm going to make an experiment and make this entire country in the image that I feel will help create oneness. And that was his goal. And he got pretty far along the line. He invented the diaphragm, for an example. It's the first time women had control of their reproduction, for an example. Okay? I mean, I could go on and on about what he did. That's all was buried by the pharaohs after him because of no way. We don't want that coming back again. His son Tutankhamun started to bring back it, and all of a sudden at 19 he's dead. His son created a chair that had the iconography that he and his wife sat on, and I bet the 1%ers got pretty nervous that it's old Akhenaten's time coming back again, and all of a sudden he dies at 19. No explanation why. Okay? And he was the son of Akhenaten. Okay? So.
You had, sorry.
Did I answer your question, or did I get anywhere near it? I mean, you know.
You mentioned in the middle of the talk about the higher self talks to us through intuition.
Yes.
And while our mind is chattering of what's going on now with the past week's experience, so there are two voices going on there, mind chatter thousands of thoughts going on, and then the inner voice is coming in. How do we distinguish between the mind chatter voice and the intuition
Ooh,
voice?
that's the key. You put it together there. That's absolutely right. You will have a knowing, a sense of it. That's the hard stuff, what you just said there. It's much easier to create a movie. I'll give you an example. Okay? It's easier to do with example. I teach down at a church on the south side called the Christ Universalist Temple. It was started by Johnny Coleman. It's a famous church on the south side. And I come down every so often and teach there like here. And this lady ran up to me, and the first time I came there, I just moved back here. And she said, I'm on a wait list to get out of my rat-infested apartment, and for 5 years I've been on this list, and they won't even take my phone call anymore, at the people that control the list to get me in a rent-subsidized apartment. Do you have anything that'll help me? And I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty. So at that time, I had the Living in Truth, the Heart one, done. I didn't have the whole album done. And I just gave it to her. I said, go home and practice this. Follow my movie. Go down in the cavern and come out on the lake of suffering and see the golden pyramid, and just make it happen in your head the way you hear me with the music and the sound effects. Okay? Just do it. Then put the CD down when you think you got the idea, and do this movie that I'm going to give you right now. She goes, what do you mean? She said, practice my CD till you got the drift of it, and then every morning make this movie in your head that I'm going to give you now. She said, okay, I got that. Okay, here's your movie. You're in your rat hole, and men in orange suits come up from the Allied van. They pick up the boxes of the bits you want to save and go down and put it in their van, and they start driving down the street, and you get in your car and you follow the van. You see going down the street. The van pulls up at your new apartment that the city of Chicago gave you, and you get out. They start unloading boxes, and you focus on your bed. Get your the headboard and the slats and the mattress down, and put your new sheets on it. And the end of the movie is you lay there and look up at the sky, the ceiling of your brand new apartment, and be in gratitude for this wonderful thing that was just given to you from God. There's your movie. Can you do that? Oh yeah, I can do that. Okay, that was your movie today on Thursday. Tomorrow morning, Friday morning, you're doing the same movie, but I want you to see some beautiful flowers on the road as you go by. I want you to think about the images and how beautiful they can be. And then Monday, make it tactile. What does the wheel feel like on your car? Same movie, put more detail in it. You're Cecil B. DeMille. You make the movie stronger and stronger and stronger until it starts to sing to you. That's the sound of truth, not the Ferrari. The sound of truth, it'll start to make you feel joyful to make your movie. You can't wait to make your movie. The universe can't ignore that. It's called the law of attraction. Something's going to happen. You finally, when it's exploding in you, you let it go. With, if it be in my highest good and the highest good of all, let this manifest for me. And she got her apartment. I came back about 6 months later and taught, and she ran up to me. I'd almost forgotten about her, and she ran all the way like you guys are, right there. They put me in an apartment 3 weeks ago. I got my apartment. It does work, but we live in a very dense, third density environment. We can't just think beautiful little thoughts and it'll all happen. We have to go for it. We have to overcome the density and our own subconscious. My sister, I'm getting into it, my sister practiced piano from the time she was 4 years old, and she was pretty good, okay? And she was 6 years older than me. In 11th grade, this I found out not just a few years back. I didn't know this. She'd never told. When the teacher told her, and imagine how this would hurt, because her dream was to go to Carnegie, put the black sheath dress on, come out, play Mahler's Fifth or whatever, right? And the teacher said, you're good, but you're not good enough. And she believed it. Isn't that horrible? Now, she said, don't feel sorry for me. I taught music in the high school system to 6th and middle schoolers for 42 years and retired. I had a beautiful life, but I always wondered, could I have done the Carnegie Hall and been a concert pianist? She let her own psychological bad vibe head talk her out of something that she probably, as an eternal spiritual being, was capable of doing. She made the choice. She put the limitation there. This lady that got her apartment, she didn't put no limitations in that system. She did it until it worked. I was very impressed with her. What the stuff we do in this workshop, I didn't say it was easy, but it will work. Okay?
One more question.
Okay.
I just wanted to, you asked about the kind of the ebb and flow. And in 2012, we ended an era of 260,000 years, and we're in between. We're all working on exactly everything he talked about. We're asked to ask our higher selves, that part of us that knows, and to work on all of this, the law of one, the unity consciousness, and we're ascending, and it's hopeful, and we're pretty much done. We're done.
Oh, wow.
So there's still, I mean, we're all living in the 3D reality, and everybody has a choice.
Yes.
As to whether or not they want to
Yes.
ascend. Mother Earth has ascended to the fourth dimension.
There it is. You got it. Exactly.
So
this is the sacred multitude. She just summed it up. The mystery schools said there'd be a time when our own planet and solar system would spin into time-space of fourth dimension, which is higher consciousness. And if the planet itself is doing that in our solar system, we better learn how to do it as well, or we will not be rebirthed on this planet anymore, because our conscious level doesn't vibrate at the Earth's vibration, and we'll have to be reborn. Not that we're being penalized on Alpha Centauri 3 or something where it's lower consciousness. That's the way it works.
Yep. And everything that he said sums up, and it's really simple. It's just
Oh, wow.
being exactly what you said and what he said.
Oh, wow.
So
I love the story.
it's very helpful.
Do you know who Edgar Casey is? Anybody? To me, this was very fascinating. He said, as I went down, I was researching at that time, learning this material. So I went down to Virginia Beach and spent a couple weeks going through all the readings. There was the very first board meeting he had of the ARE, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, which was his organization. He brought all his best friends in, 13 of them total, so he'd have an odd amount, so he could get things done. And he said, you've all had your life readings, every one of you. You know that you were Greeks, and you know you were Trojans. We're going to go into that room and we're going to get along, and your life patterns from the past don't mean diddly. We're going to make the ARE. It took them 10 minutes before they were fighting and throwing books at each other. I love that story. This is human nature. It's up to us to rise above it, okay, as she has pointed out.
One last question. Well, if there are no more questions, a hand of appreciation.
Thank you. I will be over here. I have a nice little deal for you if you want to take these home with you. I'm actually raising the price, but I'll honor the order. I'm going to raise these to $45, but I'll honor the $40 price here tonight. And I won't charge you tax, as I would normally do. And of course, there's no shipping and handling, so you save about $20 to get these here today. They are CDs, okay? They initiate you in the colors. Any of you work with chakra colors, you're used to these colors. You progressively work from the root to the crown, fast as you can, and then you will be initiated in the full way that the mystery schools initiated, a candidate initiated in the mysteries, okay? There's a little piece of paper here which I'm holding on to that's in every album. There is a PDF in here of 38 pages. It gives you a lot of the background of the initiations, which you can print out and have a 38-page folder of every word I spoke, for an example, on all the CDs. Okay? So if you want them, this is a real good time to take them.
Thank you, Jim. Certainly an opportunity. there's another opportunity as well, because on Saturday, between 1 and 3:30 p.m., Jim is leading a workshop on the mysteries of the Great Pyramid revealed. You'd forgotten about that. And so we certainly would like, if you find this topic of interest, and especially if you're interested in to learn more about the pyramids and what they were really for, and how they were constructed and how they work. Jim here is a font of information, and he's, as you can see, very eager to share. And on Saturday, it'll be a longer period of time in which he will be able to explore in depth some of the mysteries of the Great Pyramid. If you would like to participate in that, you just go to our website and look under events and workshops, and you can register online for that workshop. If you don't want to pre-register, you can just walk in on Saturday, but we would like to have some idea of how many people are coming on Saturday. And it is also cheaper if you pre-register rather than just walk in. So I encourage you to pick up one of the flyers that gives you a little description of the workshop, and come along, register for it, and come along on Saturday, 1 p.m. One other event that we have tomorrow evening, as many of you know, we do approximately one a month of various sound vibrational meditation experiences. And tomorrow night at 7 p.m., we have Marian and Gabriela Kraus leading a guided gong meditation experience. And Marian has done these workshops here, or sound meditations, for numerous occasions. And he also does it in other places. He's quite... and now he's teamed up with his wife, and they do it together. And it is quite an experience. So if you have never attended one of the gong baths, you may find it really relaxing and healing, and a great experience. And of course, if you have already participated in one, you'll know to come. That's tomorrow evening. Again, you can register online, and it is cheaper if you pre-register rather than walking in tomorrow evening. And one last announcement is, excuse me, in regards to Thursday next week, we are happy to say that Sensei Mui, who he is an American, although that's Japanese, and he's trained in the various Buddhist traditions, both the Southeast Asian and the Far East Japanese and Chan tradition. And on Thursday next week, he's going to give a lecture on Does a Fish See Water? An introduction to the holographic mind. And so it's really an interesting topic in that he brings some of the ancient aspects of Buddhism and Hinduism and Advaita, and then brings it into sort of a comparison, or seeing the similarities with some of the more recent developments in science and physics. And it's quite an interesting topic, and he's quite an interesting man. I invite you to come next Thursday to hear Sensei Mui. Does a fish see water? If you want to find out and learn something about an introduction to the holographic mind, come along. Thank you for coming this evening. Please stay and have some refreshments. Chat with Jim here. Have a look at the it's a great deal, the CDs that he has available, and enjoy. Thank you.